Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, seeking assistance and blessings by every name of Allah, the possessor of limitless mercy, the bestower of mercy. We begin this session as we continue our lessons on teaching the beginner how to read primary hadith and Athar sources. In this lesson, what we would like to do is, for those who have the handout, and as our brother al-Ustaz Sharik was mentioning, that there is a group that is part of the Masjid's WhatsApp community in which the handouts are posted. What we will do, as can be seen on the first page of the handout, is we have about 4 main segments for this lesson with Allah's assistance. We will revisit a statement that we mentioned or read last session. We're going to read a new part of the hadith after what we read last class. We're going to talk about some simple Arabic points from the chain of transmission. And then we have a short item of discussion, or the discussion segment, but most of that will be reading, inshallah. We'll be reading. Before beginning this session, I wish to, after praising Allah, I wish to extend my gratitude to those brothers and sisters who are in charge of the center and of the Jum'iyya, the Ahle-Hadith Society of Canada, and also the Kulliة al-Hadith, the Faculty of Hadith of Toronto, our brother Sheikh Ahrar, and all the other brothers and sisters who are in charge of overseeing and coordinating and facilitating. I beseech Allah to reward all of them abundantly, and I'm grateful to them for hosting these lessons that we have here. فَجَزَاهُمُ اللَّهُ خَيْرًا. May Allah reward them immensely. We will begin revisiting this heading in which we said revisiting a statement of our mother Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her. Revisiting a statement of our mother Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah be pleased with her, and may Allah be pleased with all the companions. The portion that we read said in Arabic, and this again to refresh our memories, this is Hadith 160 in Sahih Muslim. 160 in Sahih Muslim. She said, radiyallahu anha, كان أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الوحي الرؤيا الصادقة في النوم فكان لا يرى رؤيا إلا جاءت مثل فلق الصبح. The beginning of the revelation sent to Allah's Messenger, may Allah mention him with commendation and grant him protection, came in the form of true things he would see in his dreams while asleep. True things he would see in his dreams while asleep. And then she elaborated a little bit more on what these true things are referring to. Thus, there was nothing he saw that failed to appear clearly in real life, just like the light of daybreak appears clearly at the onset of each new day. There was nothing he saw that failed to appear clearly in real life, just like the light of daybreak appears clearly at the onset of each new day. This is what we read in our previous session, and we talked last time about a comparison being made and some parallels, elements of two things and parallels being made between those two sets of elements. So what we wanted to do here is I kind of put an itemized list just to give a bit of perspective about the elements and the parallels. So in terms of the elements regarding what we can perceive with our senses, there is the darkness of the night, right? We're talking here about the light of daybreak appearing clearly at the onset of each new day. We discussed the idea of the light breaking through the darkness of the night. The light breaking through the darkness of the night. So one of the elements we had involved in this comparison is darkness of the night. Darkness of the night. The parallel of that, or for that, is darkness of the night is a tangible darkness, a darkness that you can perceive with your senses. There is an intangible or abstract darkness, which is the darkness of lacking knowledge about the truth from Allah and about the revelation that He sends to guide people to Him. Okay? The darkness of lacking knowledge about the truth and the darkness of lacking knowledge about Allah's revelation. These are types of darkness, so there's a parallel. There's the darkness of the night, and there's this other type of darkness. That's one element of that whole sort of situation or picture, if you want to put it, that was being painted for us. That's darkness. Then there is light. We talked about various degrees of light. But in general, the light that's being referred to here is revelation from Allah. Revelation from Allah in more than one form. In more than one form. One of the forms that Aisha mentioned was the true things that were seen in dreams. That's one form of revelation sent by Allah to the Prophet ﷺ. And another form that was coming later, which we will read about later on in this hadith, was the revelation of the Quran. But in general, light of its varying forms and varying degrees, this is revelation from Allah of various forms and varying degrees, varying frequencies. The general idea is you have light, revelation from Allah. Daybreak. In other words, the beginnings of daylight breaking through the darkness of the night. The parallel here is revelation sent by Allah breaking through the darkness of ignorance that people are in. Right? Revelation sent by Allah, light that comes from the realm that is imperceptible to us, breaking through the darkness of ignorance that people are in. Another element, again, just to refresh our memories if we are not quite aware of what we're talking about, all of this is elaboration on that expression Aisha used when she talked about فَلَقِ الصُّبْحِ مِثْلَ فَلَقِ الصُّبْحِ, which we expressed in English by saying, just like the light of daybreak appears clearly at the onset of each new day. This phrase she used has a lot of elements, and these are elements we're kind of going through right now, because like I said, there's a darkness. If daybreak is coming, that means there was darkness and light is starting to appear. So there's a darkness, there's light, daybreak, which is what we just talked about. Now the beginnings of daylight. The beginnings of daylight appearing clearly at daybreak. These are the beginnings of daylight. The sun hasn't come up yet, right? Daybreak, dawn. Daybreak and dawn, this is the beginning. All right? Now, so these are the beginnings. The sun hasn't come up yet. The sun is still below the horizon. These are beginnings. What is the parallel for that? We said here revelation in the form of dreams being a herald of other revelation yet to come. Revelation in the form of dreams being a herald of other revelation yet to come. And on that note, maybe we might be familiar with the hadith. If I remember correctly, the wording of it mentions this. I think there might be more than one narration of this hadith with more than one wording, but one that I recall at the moment is along the lines of dreams, certain types of dreams are one out of such and such parts of prophethood, one out of such and such amount of parts. Anybody heard a number? What? I think it's 40 something. Yeah, someone said it. What? 46. 46, right. This is what comes in that hadith. There might be other narrations with other numbers. I can't recall right now. But why we mention this is because some of the scholars, how they have explained that is, does anyone know how some of the scholars have explained that hadith? That the certain types of dreams, here it's talking about the dreams that come from Allah and things that are correct, that comprises 1 out of 46 parts of prophethood. But the number, what's the significance of the number, and how, does anybody know about that? Not
Is it
quite.
an exaggeration of like a very small to significant
Here?
Signify like a very tiny.
In this case, no.
Okay.
6 months out of 23 years or more.
6 months out of 23 years of prophethood. Right. Barakallahu fi. The prophet's period of how, okay, from the time he was sent, from the time he was commissioned by Allah as a prophet till the time of his death. How many years was that? 23. And what scholars have mentioned is that if you take half a year out of that, and if you break 23 years into half-year intervals, you have 46. You have 46 parts. And they mention that the dreams, these dreams mentioned here, lasted for a duration of 1 out of those 46 half-year intervals. This is one of the ways that the scholars mention the significance of that number in that hadith, and Allah knows best. All right? So here, beginnings of daylight being a herald of the sun yet to come. This we understand, right? When the daybreak happens, the beginnings of daylight start to shine. This is a herald of more light that's coming. More light is coming. So that's the tangible. The intangible, the abstract parallel we have here is a revelation in the form of dreams being a herald of other revelation yet to come. Other revelation. The revelation that will provide more illumination, and it will continue to grow and grow. Another element of this comparison, based on the phrase used by Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, is sunrise. Sunrise, right? This isn't mentioned in what she said, but it's part of the whole kind of image, if you want to put it that way, is being painted by this phrase she used. Because at the onset of the day, we know that when the onset of the day comes, there's more day ahead. Morning is ahead too, right? So the sunrise, that would be the beginning of prophethood and receiving revelation of the Quran. That's still coming in the hadith, the same hadith that we're reading. And now that's sunrise, and as the sun rises higher and higher up into the sky and gets brighter and brighter, we said here the expansion of the sun's light as it rises higher into the sky throughout the morning. The parallel we have for that is more revelation coming and its illumination becoming stronger and stronger for all to see. Okay? These are elements of the image being kind of painted for us if we grasp this expression that was used by our mother Aisha. May Allah be pleased with her, and may Allah be pleased with all the companions. That's a little bit about where we left off last time. Now we said next in this lesson, we will read about the location where revelation of the Quran first came to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah mention him with commendation and grant protection. We're going to read today about the location. We're not going to get to revelation yet, but the location. We wrote here that the location's actual name is Jabalu Hira'in. Jabalu Hira'in. But people at present more commonly call it Jabalun Nuri. Jabalun Nur. For the people who go for Umrah or go for Hajj or something like that, if you want to ask about the direction of this place, or if you happen to be going on Shari al-Hajj, for example, the name of a street, Shari al-Hajj. If you go on that street and maybe you see it and you ask somebody, what's that mountain right there? They won't tell you it's Jabal Hira'in. They're going to tell you it's Jabal al-Nur. This is what people call it. We wrote here, we're unsure about how and when that term began to be used. But I wrote this here because generally the things that people say, this is not something that's a reliable standard for anything. But in light of, I said here, nonetheless, perhaps some of the logic behind that nickname can be understood from some of what preceded. Because we just talked about all that stuff regarding, right, Aisha's statement, and then all the things that we can comprehend if you think about what that statement entails, the light coming and so on, and revelation. Allah knows best. This might be some of the logic behind where that nickname might come from, and Allah knows best. Now, we're going to read a new piece tonight, inshaAllah. We said here, Imam Muslim said in his Sahih collection, Hadith number 160, and this is part 3 of our reading. We said here, or we are going to read from the words of Aisha radiyallahu anha. She said, ثُمَّ حُبِّبَ إِلَيْهِ الْخَلَاءُ. Then solitude became beloved to him, meaning the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah mention him with commendation and grant him protection. Then solitude became beloved to him. فَكَانَ يَخْلُو بِغَارِ حِرَاءٍ يَتَحَنَّثُ فِيهِ وهو التعبد الليالي أولات العدد قبل أن يرجع إلى أهله. And he would spend time secluded in the cave on the mountain called Hira to practice aspects of the religion prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim. One of the sub-narrators said, and that means devoting worship to Allah. And then Aisha continues, staying there for several days and nights before returning to his family. وَيَتَزَوَّدُ لِذَلِكَ. In addition, he would take provisions with him for his period of seclusion and worship. ثُمَّ يَرْجِعُ إِلَى خَدِيجَةَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهَا فَيَتَزَوَّدُ لِمِثْلِهَا. He would then return to Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, to take further provisions for another similar duration. حَتَّى فَجِئَهُ الْحَقُّ وَهُوَ فِي غَارِ حِرَاءٍ. That continued until the truth from Allah came to him while he was in the cave of Hira. This is the portion we want to look at tonight as we continue going through this hadith. This is the portion we're going to concentrate on. There are a few expressions we want to talk about here, and the English rendering that we used, the way we chose to render these phrases into English is based on the explanations that scholars have given. It's not so much trying to match words, it's trying to express in English how the scholars have explained these things in Arabic. Regarding al-khala'u, Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, said, ثُمَّ حُبِّبَ إِلَيْهِ الْخَلَاءُ. Then solitude became beloved to him. We said here that regarding solitude, al-khala'u, that was mentioned, some of the scholars suggested that it may have been similar in some ways to i'tikaf, which was later prescribed as an act of worship in Islam. It may have been similar to this, and some of the scholars have also suggested that it might have been something that they practiced even, because there were elements of the religion prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam that Quraysh, even though they were ascribing partners to Allah, they used to practice. Anybody know examples? Salah, maybe. Tawaf, right. And Hajj, yes. They used to perform these things. Whether as an act of worship for Allah alone, for others besides Allah, for some combination, Allah and others, whatever it might be. Their niyyah, their intention is one thing. But the fact of the matter is, there were traces, there were remnants of things prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim that were part of the practices of the mushrikun among Quraysh.
Why did you put the worship of Iran, the religion, aspects of the religion of Ibrahim? It's not intended by any of the words, is it?
We're going to come to that, Inshallah. Jazakallahu khairan. Al-Ustaz Sharik, or Sharik Bhai, did I get it right? Is asking us about the choice of wording for the choice of the English rendering for yatahannathu. We said practice aspects of religion prescribed for Ibrahim, so I said we're going to come to that, inshallah. So al-khala, this is one thing. Some scholars suggested it might be similar to i'tikaf. Allah knows best. Some of the scholars also commented. They said here, إنما حبب إليه الخلوة لأن معها فراغ القلب وهي معينة على التفكر وبها ينقطع عن مألوفات البشر ويخشع قلبه ويجمع همه. Solitude was made beloved to him because it allows for the heart to be cleared of diversions and it assists in contemplation. In addition, it allows the individual to be removed from things that people are normally accustomed to. It allows the individual's heart to have humility towards Allah with focus, and it allows the individual's intentions to be concentrated as opposed to being scattered. They also continue commenting. They say, فَالْمُخْلِصُ فِي الْخَلْوَةِ يَفْتَحُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ مَا يُؤْنِسُهُ فِي خَلْوَتِهِ تعويضا من الله تعالى إياه عما تركه لأجله. Thus, when people purely devote to Allah, that sort of solitude, when they purely devote to Allah, this is the idea, al-mukhlisu. It's something you're devoting purely to Allah. Allah would open to them factors that bring them comfort while alone. They're mentioning this because when a person is alone, generally speaking, by default, people find comfort in being around company that they like to be around. And when they are devoid of that company, they don't feel as good as they could be feeling. So even though there is solitude here, they mention that Allah would open to them. If they devote that solitude of this nature as an act of worship to Allah alone, Allah opens to them factors that bring them comfort even when they're alone. Allah the Most Exalted would grant those factors to them as substitutes for anything that they chose to forego for His sake. وَاسْتَنَارَ قَلْبُهُ بِنُورِ الْغَيْبِ حَتَّى تَذْهَبَ ظُلْمَةُ النَّفْسِ. The hearts of such people would be illuminated with the light that comes from the realm that is imperceptible to people in this world. You might remember we talked about this. I can't remember if it was last session or the one before. It might have been last session when we talked about the light that was coming from the tangible, perceptible realm, from the sun, and the light that was coming from the imperceptible realm, the realm that we do not perceive with our senses, the revelation that was coming from Alam al-Ghayb, the realm that is imperceptible to people in this world. So this is sort of a throwback to that same type of theme. To the extent that darkness of their hearts would depart. واختيار الخلوة لسلامة الدين وتفقد أحوال النفس وإخلاص العمل لله تعالى. In addition, such solitude is something that is to be chosen in order to protect one's adherence to the religion that Allah prescribed, to examine the conditions of various aspects of one's soul, and to devote one's deeds purely to Allah, the Most Exalted. This is what some of the scholars have mentioned regarding this idea about solitude and a bit about its function and its purpose and its effects on the person who is engaged in it. Next, we're going to move on here. So coming back to the words we read Aisha radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her, said, ثُمَّ حُبِّبَ إِلَيْهِ الْخَلَاءُ فَكَانَ يَخْلُو بِغَارِ حِرَاءٍ. Then solitude became beloved to him, and he would spend time secluded in the cave on the mountain called Hira. We wrote here, regarding that piece, the location where the aforementioned seclusion for worship took place was Gharu Hira'in, the cave on the mountain called Hira. Based on what scholars have mentioned, going there for intervals to seclude oneself for some form of worship, you don't know exactly what, but for some form of worship, may have been something that was known and done among the tribe of Quraysh, and maybe even by Abdul Muttalib, Who's Abdul Muttalib? Grandfather of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Good. Since we learned about narrators, we learned a few people and maybe up to their grandfather, great-grandfather. How far back do we know about the Prophet himself, alayhi salatu wasalam? We know Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim ibn Abdi Manafin. Okay, ibn Abdi Manaf. All right, that's 5. Okay, we'll build on that inshallah. So we know 5 so far, right? Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim ibn Abdi Manaf. Okay, we'll make that grow a little bit more over time, inshallah. I was just saying this, we should know that because we had to learn. Inshallah, we're going to revisit the Zuhri. Anybody remember his name? Muhammad ibn Muslim ibn Ubaidillah ibn Abdullah ibn Shihab. If you're going to know that many names about a narrator, you better make sure you know more than that about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. All right. Okay. Now, this is something I didn't put a reference for this here for this specific piece of information, but Mahajir mentions this in Fath al-Bari. They mentioned that Abdul Muttalib did this. He didn't mention a source for this though, and not only that, he said that due to the fact that Abdul Muttalib did this, when the Prophet Muhammad, or when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before he was commissioned as a prophet, when he would go for this type of seclusion to that cave in the mountain called Hira, no one contended with him out of respect for the fact that Abdul Muttalib preceded him in doing that, and they respected Abdul Muttalib. So Allah knows best. Like I said, there wasn't any source given for this, but Ibn Hajar did mention that.
So is that seclusion, is it a sunnah?
We're going to come to that in the last phrase of what we read, inshallah. If I don't answer you, ask me again. All right. Okay, so we have here that some sources even say he, meaning Abdul Muttalib, was the first person among Quraysh to do so, and Allah knows best. I wrote here, Allah knows best about the accuracy of that. With respect to the location itself, that cave, that mountain, some of the scholars have suggested that الحكمة في تخصيصه حراء بالتخلي فيه أن المقيم فيه كان يمكنه رؤية الكعبة فيجتمع لمن يخلو فيه 3 عبادات الخلوة والتعبد والنظر إلى البيت. The wisdom behind the Prophet, the wisdom behind him, meaning the Prophet, may Allah mention him with commendation and grand protection, making Hira in particular the place he would go for solitude, is because when someone stays there, it is possible for him to see the Kaaba. Thus, 3 forms of worship come together for someone who secludes himself there. 1, solitude. 2, particular acts of worship performed. And 3, looking at the house of worship that was designated by Allah, meaning the Kaaba. This is, again, Allah knows best. This is something some of the scholars have mentioned. Now we're going to come to the question that Al-Ustaz Sharik had asked us about yatahannathu. We said here we chose to express the meaning of yatahannathu with a tha in this wording here as practice aspects of the religion prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim. Practice aspects of the religion prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim. We said, which is one explanation that scholars have given based on an alternate narration of this hadith that contains the word yatahannafu with a fa at the end. That conveys the meaning, that word yatahannafu with a fa conveys the meaning of practicing what's called al-hanifiyatu. Al-hanifiyatu, meaning inclining towards devoting all worship to Allah and inclining away from worshipping others besides Him. This is al-hanifiyatu, right? So based on that alternate narration, some of the scholars, they say yatahannathu here, it means yatahannafu. Yatahannafu. This is one idea. So that's what it is, to practice aspects of the religion prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim, because that's what Ibrahim is identified as in a number of places in the Quran and the Sunnah. He was described as being what? Hanifan, right? Hanif. And what he was sent with is called al-Hanifiyatu. That's how it's described. So this is one idea. Now we said another explanation scholars have given for yatahannathu. Sorry, on that note, they mentioned that the tha and the tha with the 3 dots on top, and the fa, these 2 letters in words in Arabic, they are interchanged. They are interchanged in various places, and this is something that's known in Arabic. And a word, for example, you might be familiar with. Does anybody know the Arabic word for garlic? Garlic. Yeah, right. There's thumun with a tha, and also thumun with a fa. This is an example of that. These letters are interchanged, right? So this is why the scholars, they mention that these 2 words, they come in both ways in alternate narrations of this hadith, and they're synonymous, right? This is one explanation they give. We then said another explanation the scholars have given for yatahannathu is that it conveys the meaning of staying away from committing al-hinth, which refers to sins. And this is based on the way this Arabic word is constructed. Similar words are yata'athamu. The word ithmun, al-ithmu means a sin. And yata'athamu means to stay away from or avoid committing al-ithmu. Similarly, the word al-haraju can refer to difficulty. It can refer to, we could say difficulty, just to keep things simple. Al-haraju can refer to difficulty. And yataharraju, one of the meanings that word can be used to convey is to avoid difficulty and stay away from it. So similarly, al-hinthu is sins. And yatahannathu would mean, based on this explanation, to avoid or stay away from al-hinth, stay away from sins. And how would you do that? By doing what was done here, by devoting acts of worship to Allah alone without any partner. This is another explanation the scholars give, and I hope, is that sufficient to give a little bit of perspective? All right.
Sheikh,
No.
doesn't means also means to break a promise or oath?
What's that?
Doesn't it also means to break a promise or oath?
It does. In some contexts it does. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Al-hinth does mean to break an oath that is taken, or a vow. It does mean that in some contexts, Right, so here, so this is a little bit of what the scholars say about why, or not why, about what yatahannathu means in terms of its sort of the way the word itself is constructed in Arabic. Now, you notice here in the text that we read earlier in blue, we put dashes around the phrase وَهُوَ التَّعَبُّدُ. وَهُوَ التَّعَبُّدُ. We wrote one of the sub-narrators said, and that means devoting worship to Allah. So وَهُوَ التَّعَبُّدُ here, it doesn't mean, it is not a statement of Aisha. It's not a statement of Aisha. And the way we know that is because in other narrations of this hadith, you remember how in the isnad we said, even if there's some words not written, you have to insert them when you say something vocally, and one of them was what? Qala. In some narrations of this hadith, it says Qala wa huwa ta'abbudu. It says Qala before this phrase. So you know that it's not Aisha talking anymore. Because if we're talking about Aisha, what fi'l would we use? We would say qalat. So when you see qala, you know, okay, wait a minute. Right? Because why they used to do this is because earlier on, nowadays we have punctuation and all this type of stuff, but punctuation is a recent development in Arabic. Okay? Dashes and all this type of stuff and commas, these were not there before. These weren't there before. So the way they would, and even you have, like in English, we have quotation marks. But sometimes, you know, when you read in the books of scholars, maybe you guys have come across this. Sometimes you'll be reading a book and the scholar, he might say, قُلْتُ, and then he makes a remark. Have you guys ever come across something like that? Sometimes you see this word. The reason why it's there is part of the reason is because they're telling you sometimes that what came before might have been cited from another book.
You say وَأَنَا أَقُولُ sometimes.
وَأَنَا أَقُولُ, maybe, sometimes they might use it too, but in particular they might say قُلْتُ. This is because in Arabic, they don't have quotations sometimes, they didn't have stuff like this. In English, you can just put an end quote, and you know that the citation is over now. The quote you're citing is over, and what's coming after it is you yourself writing or speaking. Right, this is another thing. And all the times too, and even currently, they would write intaha at the end of something you are citing from someone else, to signify that's the end of the quote, right? So here, for simplicity, we put this within dashes, but imagine if you don't have this type of technique, or you don't use this, then you have to signify the change in speaker somehow. So they would say قَالَ وَهُوَ تَعَبُّدُ. Some of the scholars, they have said that this is a Zuhri's statement, but they don't mention anything to substantiate that it must be him in particular. This statement could have been made by anyone after Aisha, from Urwa downwards. So here we said, we expressed the meaning of وَهُوَ تَعَبُّدُ as one of the sub-narrators said, and that means devoting worship to Allah. And scholars have mentioned that the sub-narrator may have been Urwa or someone after him in the chain of transmission. This means that the meaning of that portion of Aisha's statement, without the interjection, if we were to exclude that piece within the dashes, would read like this. Then solitude became beloved to him, and he would spend time secluded in the cave on the mountain called Hira to practice aspects of the religion prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim, staying there for several days and nights before returning to his family. That's how it would be if we were to put together what Aisha said and ignore the interjection. Now the last piece, this is going to come back to the question that was asked about if it's the sunnah to that type of seclusion. We said here regarding the expression حَتَّى فَجِئَهُ الْحَقُّ وَهُوَ فِي غَارِ حِرَاءٍ. We expressed that by saying that continued until the truth from Allah came to him while he was in the cave of Hira. Scholars have mentioned that hatta, that continued until, conveys the meaning, and we're going to get to that in a second. Just a quick question, is anyone here who has learned some Arabic, do you know what type of word, not type of word, I'm sorry, what's the meaning of hatta in Arabic? In Arabic, I don't want an English equivalent. What's the meaning of hatta in Arabic? Or one of the meanings? In Arabic. Anyone? Ila an, la bas, but they call it something. There's a meaning they actually explain. No, it's called intiha al-ghayati. Intiha al-ghayati. It's what we use until for in English, but this is how that meaning is expressed in Arabic. So what it means is something continues until something happens, until a point in time, and then that's as long as the thing lasts. It doesn't happen after that, right? So coming back here, we said this. So the scholars, some of the scholars, they mentioned that hatta here, it means intiha al-ghaya. It means exactly that. It conveys the meaning انتهى توجهه لغار حراء بمجيء الملك فترك ذلك. He no longer headed to the cave in the Hira mountain once the angel came. Thus, he stopped going there afterwards. Does that answer the question about the... All right? And maybe we can add, to elaborate on that question a little bit more, there is a type of seclusion that is prescribed in Islam, and it's called i'tikaf. As for this, the wording here in this hadith tells us that the word on its own, just that hatta alone, that tells us that it's not the sunnah to do that.
So people who go to like Jabal Nur now, like they pray like 2 rak'ah in the cave.
Yeah, people who go there now, Allah knows best. It's not something, the Prophet ﷺ, he did not return. Even if you go there, I mean, I haven't been there for a long time, but the last time I remember being there, there are signs at the foot of the mountain that say that yeah, they say, you know, they tell you that I can't remember what the signs say specifically right now, but they tell you not to engage in bid'ah and stuff like that there. But some people, I mean, again, this is knowledge, right? Some of us, Allah knows best. We're sitting down reading a hadith that we might think we all know, right? Oh yeah, I know that hadith. Beginning of Revelation, yeah. Look, we sitting down reading this thing right now. Allah knows best. Even me, myself, sitting down and reading the explanation of like the brother has, Sheikh Muhammad Ali Adam, rahimahullah, his explanation of Sahih Muslim, looking at some of these things in that specific sharh for this hadith. I haven't come across some of these things before in lessons or in reading.
Is it about hatta? It sees it because referring back that used to be Hanafiyya, right? So is the Islam being revealed seized the practices of the Hanafiyya? So anything before to Islam is seized now. Would that be, in a sense, that the seclusion itself was something that was from the religion of Ibrahim al-Salam?
Like I said, this is something scholars suggested. They suggested that maybe that thing, this type of seclusion and that location, maybe this is where it might be from, but they didn't actually say that outright. It was just something they suggested, a possibility, based on the fact that there were other practices they had that were from the directives given to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. But Allah knows best if that's actually definitely or definitively the case, right? Only Allah has that knowledge. But as much as we can tell here is, the hadith, we understand from it that when Jibreel came, that was the end of going to Hira, right? That was the end of going to Hira. Okay, that's the additional portion we wanted to do. Now I have here some simple points from a chain of transmission. Arabic things we want to talk about quickly, because some Arabic stuff is part of those aspects we wanted to talk about when we read a hadith. I'm just going to I'm going to write some things here. We're going to go from the bottom. If anybody has the isnad, you can open the hadith 160, and we're going to have a look. And the way I'm going to write it is, I'm going to depict the isnad in a column. I'm going to depict the isnad in a column, and we're going to write it this way so that, inshallah, everyone, if you're familiar with it, it'll be normal. If you're not familiar with it, inshallah, familiarize yourself with it. So who's the first person, a Muslim? Okay, whose book are we reading? Muslim. Okay. So his name is what?
His name?
Yeah. Muslim. Ibn. So I might want to write a bit bigger. I think we got enough space. Al-Hajjaj. Okay. Inshallah. Sorry, my writing is not that good. I hope it's legible though. So we're gonna write Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj at the bottom. Okay, Muslim says what? Okay, so the next person is gonna be, we're just gonna write him for short here. We have Abu At-Tahiri. Okay, then that's Abu Tahir's name. Who's after Abu Tahir in Yisnad? Okay. Who did we say? What did we say his name was? I heard it. Abdullah ibn Wahab ibn Muslim. I'm just going to write Abdullah ibn. Okay, so Abdullah ibn Wahb like this. I don't think I'm going to have enough space, but that's all right. It's just for the brothers can see. We're writing it like this so far, okay? We have 3 people so far. Now, who's after Abdullah ibn Wahb? Yunus ibn Yazid. Good. So we're going to write here Yunus ibn Yazid. Good. Okay. Then we have, is that, oh, it's out, huh? It's out. Then we're going to write Yunus ibn Yazid. Ibn Shihab, what's his name? No, his name is not a Zuhri. Muhammad ibn Muslim, good. His name is Muhammad ibn Muslimin. Ibn Ubaidillahi, Ibn Abdillahi, Ibn Shihabin. Okay. All right, I didn't write this out so well, but we have here Muslim, Abu Tahir, Ibn Wahbin, Yunus, Muhammad ibn Muslim. Who's after Muhammad ibn Muslim? Urwa. Good. Urwa ibn Zubayr. I'll just write Urwa. Okay. After that, we imagine that Aisha is there and the Prophet ﷺ would be up top. Now, just like I said, we have written them in a column here. We've written them in a column, and inshallah, as we read more Hadith, we are going to represent the chain of transmission like this in a column, where you have the collector or the compiler of the book, the Hadith collection you're dealing with, he'll be at the bottom, and the Prophet ﷺ will be at the top. So this is how we should kind of conceive the flow or the order of the people in the isnad with that sort of in this way. If we get a moment, we'll revisit the idea of how the hadith was transferred, but let's talk about what we wanted to talk about first. We said here, and this is a convention I have, inshallah, it will, even if people find it abnormal, I don't think it will do anyone harm, and inshallah it will help as we move along, and it'll be especially helpful for those who are learning Arabic. I wrote here, while we are together for the purpose of reading and learning, something that we prefer is to read the endings of all Arabic words to the best of our ability. All Arabic words, okay? Every word we like to read the ending. Even if it's an ayah, we're going to pronounce the last haraka at the end of the words, okay? It's something that we try to do while we're in the context of reading and learning. We're not talking about in salat or something like that, just in class. I said here, at times when we read, we may also try to identify what basic Arabic part of speech some of the words are. And for those who are familiar with this, the parts of speech in Arabic are just three. There are only three parts of speech in Arabic, okay? There's something here called ismun, there's something else called fi'lun, and there's something else called harfun. We're going to try to identify what basic Arabic parts of speech some of the words are, while trying to avoid using English grammatical terms like noun, verb, etc. Okay? If we're going to learn Arabic, you need to know what the parts of speech are in Arabic. You can't be calling them nouns and verbs, and we don't do that. Okay? I'm just saying me, it's our preference. Inshallah, one day if we get to do some Arabic, you'll see. But the little bit we'll do here, sometimes we're going to talk about these things. So we'll define these later, but just know in Arabic there are three parts of speech, okay? There's something called ismun, and something called fi'lun, and something called harfun. This is an example of what I mean when I say we read the endings. I don't want to say ism and fi'l and harf. I would say ismun, like this, all right? Next, we said at the end of the last lesson, when the brothers read the beginning of the hadith, they started by saying, قال الإمام مسلم ابن الحجاج. Right? قال الإمام مسلم بن الحجاج. That's the bottom of our column here. The bottom of our column. And we said that means Al-Imam Muslim said. Al-Imam Muslim said. The word qala, he said, is a type of fi'lun. I want us just to know that for now. If you don't know what fi'lun means exactly, it's okay. Just know that qala, that first word I asked the brothers to say, is a type of fi'lun. And the words al-imamu and muslimun are types of ismun. Okay? Now, I wrote the tashkil on these words here. So I said that the word muslimun has two dhammas on the end, while the word al-imamu has only one dhamma on the end due to al being added at its beginning. Alright? If for those of you who might have learned a little bit of Arabic, maybe you know that already. If you don't know, this is completely new, just note this observation. That's all I'm asking. Muslimun has two dhammas on the end, and al-imamu has a al at the beginning and one dhamma on the end. Just make note of that. The combination of no al and two dhammas, and al with one dhamma. All right? I wrote here after that, outside the context of that expression, meaning al-imamu muslimun, if the word al-imamu did not have al added at the beginning, it would be imamun, just like muslimun. What's that? Write it here? Okay. For those not following along, I have this written down in the handout, but I'll just okay. Let me just erase no disrespect to Imam Muslim rahimahullah. All right. Imamu and imamun. Okay? Combination. Al plus one dhamma. No al plus two dhammas. Just an observation to make, and remember this combination. I'm not saying it's everywhere and every word and always like this, but just as at a beginning stage, just remember that type of thing, okay?
But generally we can say there's no tanween at the end of the alif lam.
What's that?
So we wouldn't use tanween at the end.
That's the idea. That's the observation we want to make. Just, you got the tanween, you got two dhammas and no al. Here you got one dhamma, you got an al. Alright, that's it. Okay, we said here this is a general default, like you mentioned, but it has exceptions. Some exceptions related to the chain we're reading are the names. I didn't write the tashkil in, but we're going to write them in now. Yunus, his name is Yunusu. Okay? And this name is Yazida. With the way it's written, is Yunusubnu Yazida. Okay? If we didn't have this Yunusubnu in the beginning, this word Yazid, that person's name Yazid, would be Yazidu. Okay? It would be Yazidu. Now, here, Muslimun, I didn't write it down. Muslimun, that's the name of the person who compiled the book we're talking about. He's Muslimun. Muslimun. But like we said, it's a general default, but we have exceptions, and there are exceptions in these same names. Yunusu is a name, it only has one dhamma on the end. Yunusu. And Yazidu is like that too. You don't say Yunusun and you don't say Yazidun. You say Yunusu and Yazidu. And this name, we didn't write Aisha's name up top, but her name as well is Aisha tu, not Aisha tun. And Urwa as well, his name is Urwa tu, not Urwa tun. I didn't write Urwa in the handout, but that's another exception. Okay? Each of them only has one dhamma at the end, unlike the name Muslimun. Alright? Just observations right now. Reasons and why and all that stuff is for another time. Just things to pay attention to take note of and to observe. That's one idea. In the expression Ibnu Wahbin, there's another idea now. Wahab's son, or the son of Wahab, there are two words that are used together. There's Ibn and Wahab. If we were to write each word on its own, such they are not used together, I have them written here. We can write them here too. We would have, alright, whatever. I'll rewrite some of these if we need them. We will have the word Ibnun and Wahbun. Alright, those are our two words. Ibnun and Wahbun. It will be like this. Sorry, that's not, alright. Ibnun and Wahbun. Alright? Ibnun and wahbun, like that. Now, we wrote here, so ibnun means a son, and wahbun means someone named Wahab. Wahbun would be someone named Wahab. So we got these two words, ibnun and wahbun. That's if they're on their own. Then we wrote here, when we put the two words together to convey the meaning of Wahab's son, or the son of Wahab, the endings become ibnu wahbin, right? We remove one of these, and we remove both of those, and we replace them with this. It becomes ibnu wahbin. That's how you say Wahab's son. If there's ibnun and wahbun, that just means a son and somebody named Wahab. Like that, two separate thoughts. Wahab's son, or son of Wahab, it happens like this. Now we have another example in the isnad. What is it? Well, I mean, if anybody's looking at the handout, you already know what it is. But if you're not looking at the handout, what is it? We had another example of this type of construction in this same isnad. Anybody know what it is? Ibnu Shihabin. That's right. Shihab's son. Just same idea. We said it's something general, and it has exceptions. Ibnu Wahbin, Ibnu Shihabin. One exception is this thing we just pointed out right here. Yeah. We don't say Ibnu Yazidin. You say Ibnu Yazida. Alright? So that's that. Now, I closed off here by saying pronouncing the Arabic words. This is why, it's part of the reason why when we in class, we want to read the endings of everything without exception. Okay? Because if we were to pronounce the word as, like how I wrote here, ibn, like that, if you just read the word like this, if you read this word like ibn Wahab, like that, you won't know what the ending is. You won't know the construction, and you won't know how to read the word right. Ibn Shihab, if you read the word like that, you won't know what the ending of each word is supposed to be. Right? So I pronouncing the Arabic words Ibn Wahab, or Ibn Yazid, or Ibn Shihab without their endings would not allow us to recognize this. So these were just a few things we wanted to bring out from the isnad, and I'm doing this because I want us, inshallah, to just kind of be attentive to when we see things. It might be fresh, it might be new, but always observe. Always observe. Even if you don't know exactly why as yet, still be observant, okay? This is as much as we wanted to cover, and the discussion portion that we have, I actually wanted us to spend some time reading. Is it time for the adhan yet? It is? Almost? Okay. I would like at least two readings if we could. What I want to do is I want us to read out the portion that we covered so far, all the way from قال الإمام مسلم ibn al-Hajjaji through the isnad up until the matan that we covered today, up until the end of the matan that we covered today. Maybe what we can do is, if after the adhan we can have someone read. Anybody want to read for us? Yerbo will be one reader. Who else we want? Anyone else? Danielle, you want to read? Yeah? Okay. We can ask 3 readers too. I mean, there's no objection to that. No takers? You do it too? Okay. Alright, Yerbo will read for us first after the adhan, inshallah. Just piece by piece, like how it is there. If any of the kids want to read too, I enlarge the text so it might be a little bit easier for any of the young guys to read if they feel like it. We'll see. We'll start with 3 readers today, inshallah. And yeah, just piece by piece, exactly how it is there, to remind ourselves of what we've read, and inshallah we can try to, maybe within our minds at least, piece together some of the explanation that we came into contact with so far. Alright, we're going to pause here for the adhan, inshallah, and we'll continue with reading afterwards. Yarbo will do first, Danielle will be second, Talal will go after third, inshallah.
قال الإمام مسلم ابن الحجاج.
And sorry, just a good thing to do while we're reading too here, even though it's not written, we can add rahimahullah after saying his name. So we say قال الإمام مسلم بن الحجاج rahimahullah, the leading scholar of Islam, Muslim Hajjaj, may Allah have mercy upon him, said,
قال الإمام مسلم بن الحجاج رحمه الله, the leading scholar of Islam named Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj, may Allah have mercy on him, said, حدثني أبو الطاهر أحمد بن عمري بن عبد الله بن عمري بن الصرح. Abu Tahir Ahmad ibn Amr ibn Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Sarh narrated to me. قال أخبرنا ابن وهب. Abu Tahir said, Ibn Wahb narrated to us. قال أخبرني يونس. Ibn Wahb said, Yunus narrated to me. عن ابن شهاب, from Ibn Shihab. قال حدثني عروة بن الزبير رضي الله that he said, Urwa ibn al-Zubair narrated to me, أن عائشة رضي الله عنها زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبرته أنها قالت, that Aisha, wife of the Prophet, may Allah mention him with commendation and grant him protection, narrated to him. Urwa narrated that she had said, كان أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الوحي الرؤيا الصادقة في النوم. The beginning of the revelation sent to Allah's messenger, may Allah mention him with commendation and grant him protection, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, came in the form of true things he would see in his dreams while asleep. فكان لا يرى رؤيا إلا جاءت مثل فلق الصبح. Thus there was nothing he saw that failed to appear clearly in real life, just like the light of daybreak appears clearly at the onset of each new day. ثم حبب إليه الخلاء. Then solitude became beloved to him. فكان يخلو بغار حراء يتحنث فيه وهو التعبد الليالي أولات العدد الليالي أولات العدد قبل أن يرجع إلى أهله. And he would spend time secluded in the cave on the mountain called Hira to practice aspects of the religion prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim. One of the sub-narrators said, and that means devoting worship to Allah, staying there for several days and nights before returning to his family. وَيَتَزَوَّدُ لِذَلِكَ. In addition, he would take provisions with him for his period of seclusion and worship. ثُمَّ يَرْجِعُ إِلَى خَدِيجَةَ رضي الله عنها فَيَتَزَوَّدُ لِمِثْلِهَا. He would then return to Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, to take further provisions for another similar duration. حتى فجأه الحق وهو في غار حراء. That continued until the truth from Allah came to him while he was in the cave of Hira.
Jazakallah khair. All right. Danielle, can you please read that for us too?
Should I hold? قال الإمام مسلم بن الحجاج رحمه الله, the leading scholar of Islam named Muslim ibn al-Hajjaj, may Allah have mercy on him, said, حدثني أبو الطاهر أحمد بن عمرو بن عبد الله بن عمرو بن سرح Abu Tahir Ahmad ibn Amr ibn Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Sarh narrated to me. قال أخبرنا ابن وهب. Abu Tahir said Ibn Wahab narrated to us. قال أخبرني يونس. Ibn Wahab said Yunus narrated to me. قال أخبرني يونس. Ibn Wahab said Yunus narrated to me. عن ابن شهاب, from Ibn Shihab. قال حدثني عروة بن الزبير, that he said Urwa ibn al-Zubayr narrated to me. أن عائشة رضي الله عنها زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبرته أنها قالت, that Aisha, a wife of the Prophet, may Allah mention him with commendation and grant him protection, narrated to him. Urwa narrated that she had said, كان أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من الوحي الرؤيا الصادقة في النوم. The beginning of the revelation sent to Allah's Messenger, may Allah mention him with commendation and grant him protection, came in the form of true things he would see in his dreams while asleep. فكان لا يرى رؤيا إلا جاءت مثل فلق الصبح. Thus there was nothing he saw that failed to appear clearly in real life, just like the light of daybreak appears clearly at the onset of each new day. ثم حبب إليه الخلاء. Then solitude became beloved to him. فكان يخلو بغار حراء يتحنث فيه. قال وهو التعبد الليالي أولات العدد قبل أن يرجع إلى أهله. And he would spend time secluded in the cave on the mountain called Hira to practice aspects of the religion prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. One of the sub-narrators said, and that means devoting worship to Allah, staying there for several days and nights before returning to his family. وَيَتَزَوَّدُ لِذَلِكَ. In addition, he would take provisions with him for his period of seclusion and worship. ثُمَّ يَرْجِعُ إِلَى خَدِيجَةَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهَا فَيَتَزَوَّدُ لِمِثْلِهَا. He would then return to Khadija, may Allah be pleased with her, to take further provisions for another similar duration. حَتَّى فَجِئَهُ الْحَقُّ وَهُوَ فِي غَارِ حِرَاءٍ. That continued until the truth from Allah came to him while he was in the cave of Hira.
Jazakallahu khairan. Jazakallahu khairan. So we had one more reader. Inshallah, we're going to do that, and that will be the conclusion of tonight's lesson. Our brother Talal is going to read for us the portion that we have in the discussion section. So whenever you're ready, we can go for it.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال الإمام مسلم بن الحجاج رحمه الله, the leading scholar of Islam named Muslim ibn Hajjaj said, حدثني أبو الطاهر أحمد بن عمرو بن عبد الله بن oh, okay, I can see. Oh, okay. Abdullah ibn Amri ibn Sarhin. Abu Tahir Ahmad ibn Amr ibn Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Sarh narrated to me. قال أخبرنا ibn Wahb. Abu Tahir said Ibn Wahab narrated to us. قال أخبرني يونس. أخبرني يونس. Ibn Wahab said Yunus narrated to me. عن ابن شهاب, from Ibn Shihab. قال حدثني أروة بن الزبير, that he said Urwa ibn al-Zubayr narrated to me. أن عائشة رضي الله عنها زوج النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم صلى الله عليه وسلم أخبرته أنها قالت, that Aisha, a wife of the Prophet, may Allah mention him with commendation and grant him protection, narrated to him. Urwa narrated that she had said, كان أول ما بدأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من وحي الرؤيا الصادقة في النوم The beginning of the revelation sent to Allah's Messenger, may Allah mention him with commendation and grant him protection, came in the form of true things. He would see in his dreams while asleep. فَكَانَ لَا يَرَى الرُّؤْيَا إِلَّا جَاءَتْ مِثْلَ فَلَقِ الصُّبْحِ. Thus, there was nothing he saw that failed to appear clearly in real life, just like the light of daybreak appears clearly at the onset of each new day. ثُمَّ حُبِّبَ إِلَيْهِ الْخَلَاءُ. Then solitude became beloved to him. فَكَانَ يخلو بغار حراء يتحنث فيه وهو التعبد إلي الليالي أولات العدد أولات العدد قبل أن يرجع إلى أهله. And he would spend time secluded in the cave on the mountain called Hira to practice. Oh, okay. It's almost done. And he would spend time secluded in the cave on the mountain called Hira to practice aspects of the religions prescribed for the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. One of the sub-narrators said, and that means devoting worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, staying there for several days and nights before returning to his family. وَيَتَزَوَّدُ لِذَلِكَ. In addition, he would take provisions with him for his period of seclusion and worship. ثُمَّ يَرْجِعُ إِلَى خَدِيجَةَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهَا فَيَتَزَوَّدُ لِمِثْلِهَا. He would then return to Khadija radiallahu anha to take further provisions for another similar duration. حتى فجأه الحق وهو في غار حراء. حتى فجأه الحق. It says, no? I'm misreading it, sorry. حتى فجأه الحق وهو في غار حراء. That continued until the truth from Allah came to him while he was in the cave of Hira.
Just say it on the mic.
Which part?
This one, no, I was saying keep the mic close to you.
Oh, okay. Well, it's done though, it's fine. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Alright, inshallah, we're going to conclude our lesson with after that reading, and we will conclude as we did with the dua. It was narrated, authentically narrated, that the Prophet ﷺ would rarely stand to leave a gathering until he said the following supplication for his companions. Allahumma aqsim lana min khashyatika ma yahulu baynana wa bayna ma'asika. Oh Allah, we implore you to grant us a share of fearing you with understanding, which prevents us from disobeying you. Wa min ta'atika ma tuballighuna bihi jannataka. We implore you to grant us a share of obedience to you by which you allow us to reach the abode of paradise that you have prepared for your obedient worshipping servants. وَمِنَ الْيَقِينِ مَا تُهَوِّنُ بِهِ عَلَيْنَا مُصِيبَاتِ الدُّنْيَا. We implore you to grant us a share of certainty by which you alleviate for us the adversities of this world. وَمَتِّعْنَا بِأَسْمَاعِنَا وَأَبْصَارِنَا وَقُوَّتِنَا مَا أَحْيَيْتَنَا وَاجْعَلْهُ الْوَارِثَ مِنَّا. We implore you to enable us to benefit from our hearing, our sight, and our strength for as long as you keep us alive, and to allow that benefit to remain all the way until we leave this world. وَاجْعَلْ ثَأْرَنَا عَلَى مَنْ ظَلَمَنَا. We implore you to enable us to regain our rights from those who have done us injustice. وَانْصُرْنَا عَلَى مَنْ عَدَانَا. We implore you to support us against those who are hostile towards us. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ مُصِيبَتَنَا فِي دِينِنَا. We implore you to not cause us to be afflicted in our religion. وَلَا تَجْعَلِ الدُّنْيَا أَكْبَرَ هَمِّنَا وَلَا مَبْلَغَ عِلْمِنَا. We implore you to not cause this world to be our greatest concern or the farthest extent of our knowledge. وَلَا تُسَلِّطْ عَلَيْنَا مَنْ لَا يَرْحَمُنَا. And we implore you to not give authority over us to anyone who would not be merciful towards us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. May Allah bestow His protection, mercy, and blessings upon all of you.